Dawnlight, welcome to Forfellingness Belysning illumination from the ancestors, guiding your path today.
Every day, someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiancé, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them.
God Morgan, and happy Wotan's Day to you. I hope that this week is going wonderfully for you and that all of the energies that you have looked for and that you have needed in your own life have come to fruition and that you've been able to absorb those and really appreciate the world around you. Today we're talking about the time, the season, autumn, as modern people would refer to it. As we're swinging in away from summer into winter here in Alaska particularly, we're talking about the season of Jera. Before we get started today, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed. For those of you who haven't done so yet, by all means, hit the buttons, pow, 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 and ring that bell. Do all of those super secret things with all the different platforms that you may enjoy us. Hopefully, something resonates with your journey. So, as always, I want to give a huge to my friends and family. New Reality TV, New Reality, of course, of perspectives of our spiritual journey, helps us intellect, help us that resonates in our heart and actually brings to path. Well, today, as I mentioned, we're talking about seasons. The greatest thing, hindsight, is this ability stops along the way. Remember, our destiny is but a it which to aspire to, right? So when we think about our trajectory through our lives, remember there's a bunch of things that are going to happen, particularly throughout earlier, middle, and end, obviously, of our lives that are super important to our spiritual growth. The first and foremost is as we are a child and we're growing up and we're observing and we're watching and we're paying attention, we're actually building, as you may recall, we've mentioned the idea of a recipe card. The recipe card, of course, identifying chemical compositions within our bodies that are returning from the well of the self, and this, as the energy is unfolding in the horn of feeling, our brain has the ability to kind of look at what composition is actually being returned, what pieces, what hormones, what are all the workings of this chemistry returning into the horn of feeling. And that chemistry is then identified on this recipe card that we're going to build throughout the earlier part of our lives. Now, to say that we're done building at some age is absolutely insane. We can't ever stop. The recipe card is written in pencil, right? So we are constantly changing that. We're constantly seeing different experiences and our different interpretations of those experiences, which then leads to a different recognition when we get to that moment where we're going to evaluate against the recipe card. So those are always changing. We're always growing. We're always evolving. different experiences in our lives will bring in different pains, and will bring in different interpretation. It'll bring in all kinds of different things, influences that are going to alter the energy that we're going to then convert into what we know as an emotion. Many people ask me, well, what is pain? What is joy? What is love? What is all these things? Well, it's simply I guess simplistically put, it's a energy composition created by your interpretation of the experience that you're having. If that makes sense. The values, the virtues, all of those things, and which will add more energy or distract more energy, one of the two, and manipulate in a pool where it's converted, the energy is now converted into biochemistry. That biochemistry then filters through the body. Now, the body has the opportunity at this point to manipulate that. Now, remember, any type of mind-altering substances, whether it be too much meat, whether it be some other kind of mind-altering medicine, we're going to see a manipulation of that biochemistry as it kind of filters up, and then ultimately it'll arrive at the horn of feeling. Now, at the horn of feeling, again, we have that recipe card. We're going to evaluate what this chemistry looks like as it's inputted into the horn of feeling. As it goes into the horn of feeling, then it's converted back to energy and for storage. Now, what I think we've forgotten throughout the generations is that our path, albeit nothing's carved in stone, okay? Excuse me. You're not supposed to do anything, right? You're born, you live, you'll leave your physical form. Those are the only requirements. Everything else between A and B is up to you. You're driving. You're in charge of the trajectory at which we travel. A lot of people say, oh, well, what about, in some doctrines, some of the doctrines that I've studied is, well, the gods already know the way. They know what you're going to do throughout your lifetime, and so it's kind of free will, but it's really not. Well, I'm here to say it is free will, all right? And the gods don't know any more than you do, all right? The gods understand that you have choices, and you can make those choices, and based on your previous experience, based on your history of making decisions, they can kind of guess what you're going to do, but they don't know, okay? And when we decide to take charge of that, and we start dictating how we're going to accept and respond to different experiences within our lives, we're kind of taking back the potential of winding up in somewhere we don't want to be. Now, am I saying that when we take charge of our lives, everything is going to work out just the way we want? No. What I'm saying is that your response to a life that exists is your life, okay? So you are going to experience good things, perceived good things and bad things. They're going to come in and out of your life, in and out of your existence, and your response to them is what gives them polarity. So if we have an experience that we're not particularly fond of, and we decide to absorb that experience and let it rent space up in the mind, and we hang on to it, That's our decision. Whether we think it isn't or not is irrelevant. We have authorized it to take up residence. All right? We don't have to. We can remember the event, as in if we witnessed a traumatic event, and we say, oh, that was really bad, and I really feel sorry for the people that were in that event, maybe who experienced that. Ultimately, we have to remember that that event taught us something. That event, that experience brought to us intellect, imagery, and emotional states. All of those energies came in with that experience. And what we decide to do is up to us, right? I find people who have some individuals who come and see me, and they're talking about, well, we're experiencing all this in our lives, and it's so negative, and it's so this, that, experiencing it, or are you watching it in the news? Well, we're watching the news, and the news is very negative, and this, that, and okay. Turn off the news. Don't expose yourself to energy you don't want. Conversely, or at the same time, not conversely, but on the other side of the coin, is what if you said, you looked at what you would have maybe perceived as a negative experience and said, what's the positive in that experience? What's the good? My ancestors, one of the earlier channels and some of the knowledge that I brought back with me once I established connections with my grandfathers, was this idea of comparing our lives, our existence, to an atom. It's a wonderful analogy. It really is. Because if you think about an atom, for those of you who are not comfortable or knowledgeable in atomic structure, let me help. The atom is composed of three things: protons, neurons, and electrons. Okay? The protons and the neurons are going to bond together to create this thing called a nucleus. Okay? And so that's kind of the center of an atom, is the nucleus. And it has protons and it has neurons. And they're stuffed together and they're bonded together. And then you have the electron, which is kind of floating around on the outside, right? Outside of the nucleus. This is a perfect analogy of our existence, is that our nucleus is composed of physical existence and our emotional responses to those physical existence. So those are part and parcel, they're one and the same. That is our physical existence, okay? But then we have this other part called the electron, or, as my ancestors refer to it, spiritual existence, our spiritual self. It's connected to the atom, right? But it's loosely connected, and it's certainly not bonded to anything, so it's kind of moving around. Which tells us, really in an analogy kind of way, or in a visual kind of way, that our spiritual self moves freely in the spiritual realm. It's out there just kind of enjoying the deities, enjoying other spiritual entities, enjoying the arrival of all this intellect and experience. And sharing. It shares. When we process our memories are addressed by both our physical, our sensory input, mind, our physical mind, and our spiritual mind at the same time. So they kind of both draw on the thing here in the middle is the memories. And so our memories are shared across the spiritual realm. Now, what does this do? Why do we do this? Well, think about it this way. If I wanted to learn about a particular thing, and let's say I want to learn about this. This is a wonderful piece that a good friend of mine brought to me, and so wonderful piece. polar bear fur. I love it. I absolutely love the piece, and it's a hair thing. But I want to learn more about this piece, right? And I really want to learn what it is about this. If I stare at it from one direction all the time, and this is the only way I ever see this piece, I don't really get a full appreciation of the piece itself, right? But it's not until I can kind of begin to see the piece from different angles, from different perspectives, that I begin to have a true appreciation for it, right? I can really begin to see all the beautiful beadwork. For those, let's see. Let me see if I can bring this up close here a little bit. Here it is. It's a wonderful piece, and it's if you can't see, it's a hair tie here. There it is. But if I want to learn more about it, I'm going to kind of change my perspective of it. I'm going to look at it from different angles, right? I'm going to engage different sensory input, maybe. I'm going to feel the polar bear fur, which is wonderfully soft, believe it or not. And I'm going to feel, I smell. I don't really smell anything, but then again, I've been playing hockey for a long time, so I don't know if my nose works. And no, I don't have COVID. I have hockey, all right? Kind of close sometimes. So I'm going to look at it from different angles. Well, this is the same way when we want to learn about a particular experience in our lives. It's the same way we should see that experience. We don't look at it from one perspective. We look at it from multiple perspectives. And so think about it this way. When we have an experience, any experience, even the mundane, right? And you have an emotional response to it, you're teaching both other spiritual entities as well as the deities themselves, allowing them to enlarge their perspective of this particular event, right? So this is why, in many cases, as I communicate periodically with deities and other spiritual entities, this is why they may seem so wise, so knowledgeable, because they have access to these spiritual thoughts and experiences that are being passed from our memories through our spiritual self out into the spiritual realm. So we're teaching as we're living, right? So we're providing for others this different perspective of these events, these experiences that we're having. So wonderful opportunity for us to stop and say, wait, what am I experiencing? Am I experiencing a negative, or am I putting a negative spin on this? Am I not looking at it the right way? What am I learning? Most importantly, what am I teaching? Right? So think about our lives the same way. I'm always reminded when I was a young parent, I think like every young parent, we go through this stage where we're wanting to live life, we're wanting to do the things we want to do, but yet we realize that our child is watching, right? And so we're like, should we do that? Because do we want to give the wrong impression to the child? Do we want to teach them the wrong things? And so we kind of go through that quandary, right? That conflict. And ultimately the idea is that we are demonstrating to the child a different perspective. Are they ready for that? I'm not here to judge that. So ultimately, looking at our lives through different perspectives allows us to have a better view and allows us to learn more. And this is really when we talk about the season of Jera, the Rune Jera, represents the seasons. Everything has a season. Everything comes into our life at a certain time and lasts for a certain period of time to teach us, to help us filter this information, to teach the spiritual realm. So, super important that we recognize the stepping stones along our path. I'm going to take a very quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to kind of finish out and talk about how we can implement this understanding of spiritual seasoning and seasons so that we can time our lives in the way that we choose to. Whether they're good experiences, the perception is they're good or bad experiences. Nonetheless, we want to control that. We want to control our responses to that. All right? So we'll be right back after this quick commercial and we'll finish it out.
The air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all newrealitytv.com.
Welcome back. Thank you for taking that quick break with me. And as always, I very much am so proud of my friends and family at New Reality. So I hope you will check them out, newrealitytv.com. Wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So check them out, please. Today we're talking about the seasons of Jera. We're talking about how understanding that kind of paves the way for us to learn from our experiences and certainly recognize our evolutionary path. When I first started, kind of began my spiritual growth, if you will, I was very sure that there were two paths in our lives. There was a physical path, that which we lived every day, and there was a spiritual path, and that most often they ran in parallel, but nonetheless they were two different paths. Well, my ancestors have sat down with me and explained to me that they are indeed not two different paths. They are the same paths. They are simply different perspectives of the same path, right? So when we think about going to church, for those of you who attend a Christian church and you're going to church, when you get to the church, your commute to the church has set your brain. It has set the mood. It has set, different emotional states that when you arrive at the location, you're already predisposed to certain emotional states. Okay, so you're already either available to learn or not, right? When you get there. Why? Because you've had this series of events. Maybe you've struggled getting your children ready, and it's been a real wrestle to get everybody in the car and on the way to the building at which you are going to attempt to learn. Okay, so the struggle has preset your emotional state that will then alter the experiences that you have to learn. One of the things that they actually did a study, and scientific study, and talk about people when they were studying for like tests and stuff in college and whatnot. When they listened to music and they were more relaxed and they were more comforted, they were in a better place, whatever kind of music they liked, they seemed to retain information better. Well, it makes absolute sense. When we're more relaxed, when we're more comfortable, when we're not fighting against the system, we can absorb more. More importantly, there's not the amount of corruption that's being passed through our imagination, okay, and that mood ring. Those two things are going to really set the way we see the experiences that we have. So we're going to be more open to learning. We're going to be more open to different perspectives. All of those things are going to become more up when we have that mood ring set, and B, our imagination is kind of tampered down a little bit. Now, imagination can go both ways. We can imagine the positive. This is the age-old saying that you may hear from particularly coaches and whatnot, which is the fake it till you make it thing. That's exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about faking it here in our brain by setting our imagination. So our imagination energy feeds into our sensory input that then now we've got a little bit more powerful energy. So we're going to see these experiences, these situations, these events, we're going to see them very differently than we would have had we not had that imagination feeding into our sensory input. And then our mood is critical to creating that first filter. Remember, as we take this experience we have called life, and we bring it into our eye, as an example, all the senses work the same way, but as we bring it into our eyeball, our eye is going to convert it to bioelectricity because it's going to put it on the optic nerve. Okay, the optic nerve is what transmits, this imagery away from outside into the